Hi everyone, my name's Daniel, T1T Dan, and I'm going to talk to you today about my type 1 diagnosis story. Before I start with all that, three things I've got to get, well, four things technically. One, this is my first video, so please go easy on me. Two, I'm not a perfect type 1 at all. No one is. You're trying to replicate an organ in your body. There's no way that you can just do that. Three, again, I'm not an expert. I've got a lot of experience in terms of living with the condition for long periods of time, but definitely not an expert. And four, if you need, I'm not a healthcare professional, but if you need help with your type 1, then please go and get the help that you need. And just going a bit back to my diagnosis story. So a type 1 diagnosis is it's unique to everyone. Everyone has a different perspective and a different opinion and how a different set of feelings. So whether you're the person with type 1 or a relative of the person with type 1, how you deal with that diagnosis at that moment in time is unique to you. So just in terms of my own diagnosis, so I was diagnosed, say, 22 years ago, so in 1996. And it was over the summer holidays, and I was drinking a lot, but it was hot British summer, and no one really thought anything of it at all. I was staying at my nan's house, drinking Ribena all the time, and as I said, no one thought anything of it. Everything seemed fine. It was hot. He's just drinking a lot. And then one day we were going on a family trip to the cinema, and I was unwell, so we had to leave early. And I was still unwell for the rest of the day. And then staying at my nan's house then in the evening, obviously back at home, still unwell. And my mum decided to call the emergency doctor. So he came, he tested my blood sugar levels, basically said, you need to take him to A&E now. At the time I was 10 years old, didn't really fully understand what was happening. So fast forward to the hospital now, we're there, there's a lot of waiting around, a lot of poking, a lot of prodding, and not really understanding the situation at all. And we're there, just waiting. And then it was the following morning, quite early in the morning, and I can remember this so vividly, that they had finally got the diagnosis, knew what was wrong with me, and the doctor sat me down and said, you had diabetes? And those words just stick with me to this day. I can remember exactly where I was sitting. I can remember the doctor's posture. I can remember so much, so vividly from that moment in time. But I didn't understand the context of what actually was happening. So it was, you're in hospital, you aren't well, and then I've been told I have this thing, but I don't know what this thing is. And I guess it was a moment of being the unknown and feeling scared, but not quite sure what I was scared about purely because of my age. So anyway, they carted me off to the children's ward, and I was there for, I think, about 4 or 5 days. One of the highlights, I'd say, is probably actually being interviewed by a local TV channel. I think one of my family members still has that video today on tape. And I remember a lot from that day. So I remember my first ever hypo, and I was just sitting on the bed and I started to feel funny. And the only way I could describe it now is like when your phone vibrates and it's like bzz, bzz, and I just felt that all over my body. So I was like, I feel funny, what's going on? And the nurse said, oh, you're having a hypo, and gave me some hypo treatment. But again, I didn't really understand the full context of what hypo was, what's a hypo treatment. It was just, I felt funny, I needed to drink this drink. And I also remember my very, very first injection. I know in the lead up to it, they made me practice on an orange in terms of injecting myself. And I remember how the ward was set up. There was a room to the left where the nurses, where you would go to If you didn't get medication at your bed, you would go to that room. It was towards the entrance and on the right hand side, and I think that's where they kept all their nurses' bits. So went down there and I sat on this table, probably a bed now, looking back, and they were like, "Oh, you need to do an injection." I was petrified of needles, and I just couldn't go through with it. The thought of having to inject myself was so scary at that moment in time that I just couldn't go through with it at all. And I remember it clearly because I couldn't do it, and so my mum did it, and I just remember the needle going in. And bear in mind, this is over 20 years ago, so the small needles that we have nowadays weren't around. I'm talking, it was a syringe, probably about that big, quite thick, and like a proper syringe going into my little skinny 10-year-old legs. And the pain, it was so painful. And I think I just cried and cried and cried afterwards. And probably then what was going to happen, or in terms of how the rest of my life was going to be, that's probably when it really hit me. And I just, and I think the days after the diagnosis, it was really just, it took a lot of adjusting for me, and I think for my family. And because it was over the summer holidays, it did allow a bit of time to get into an understanding of what needed to be done. But also, going back to school, it felt different. So it almost felt that I left school quite normal, and then I was going back to year 6 as somebody different and broken, and so many things that I needed to do. And I think that as a 10-year-old, you don't, as I've said earlier, you don't understand how complex the diagnosis is. You just see in such simple terms that my body's broken, it's not working properly, I have to do something now in order to fix my body. And I think that's one of the hardest things to deal with. And you're also forced to grow up so young and take on these responsibilities that 10, 11-year-olds your age aren't doing at all. They don't have to worry about going hyper. They don't have to worry about what they're eating. They don't have to worry about doing injections. They don't have the thoughts or fears of having to inject themselves with a needle. They don't have any of that. They can just go out and play. They can just do what they want to do. Whereas now you're not like them. You're seeing all your friends still the same as what they were before, but now you're different, and it was very isolating at the time. And I think being that young, and obviously I know people, the children younger than me who's diagnosed with type 1, like, everything has a consequence for you, and you don't understand what consequences are at that age. So playing exercise, if you go too low, doing exercise, if your blood sugar goes too low, then you go hypo. But you don't understand that's a consequence of doing the exercise. You don't understand it all. It's just as simple as something is wrong. And I think looking back, there's so many emotions that the diagnosis evokes within me. It's the, what's wrong with my body? Why did this happen? What caused it? I'm not normal. I'm different to everyone else. And I think those struggles of accepting my type 1 diabetes diagnosis stayed with me for a long period of time. Probably from, I'd say, 10, 11 years old to my early 20s. And there was a big battle to accept that I actually had this condition. You go through so much where you're trying to fit in, trying to be normal, trying to handle life as everyone else is at that age. But then you've got this other thing which is just on your back and it's not leaving you. And you're so young, but in effect, you've got a full-time job, even though you're not ready to work. And I think that, again, has a massive impact on has a massive psychological impact on you as somebody with type 1 diabetes at a young age. I hope my videos just explained a bit more about my diagnosis. And if you want to comment on your diagnosis story, I'd love to hear it in. Just please comment below. And obviously you can like the video and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks. Bye.